Hello and welcome to an all-new episode of Anime Brain Freeze. We are your hosts from an alternate universe.
I am John.
And I'm CC. And this is the show where we review all the anime series from the previous season we did and didn't watch start to finish. Today we have an emotion-laden trash stash and a show that's bursting at the seams with everything that anime has to offer on the menu. But first, we have some rather big news to talk about. So there was some big news breaking last week, Thursday to be specific, and it's good news, I think, for anime fans. We'll see what it means for the industry. But yeah, Crunchyroll and Funimation, the two behemoths of licensing anime for the Western market, are partnering up. What does that exactly mean, John? Can you elaborate on that?
Well, it sounds like there's some cross-streaming opportunities where they're going to be offering each other shows on their services. Like some of Funimation shows like D-Gray Man, First Love Monster are going to be watchable on Crunchyroll. And some Funimation shows like classics like Cowboy Bebop and Psycho-Pass will be watchable on Crunchyroll.
Yeah, and I think later, if I remember correctly, in fall or something, the stuff that has been formerly Crunchyroll only will then be available to watch on Funimation streaming service as well. I think examples mentioned were 91 Days and Mob Psycho 100 and Orange.
Yeah, those for the shows that they're mentioning are going to get dubs as well.
Yeah, right, exactly. Dub's a good point. Funimation is apparently also going to help out Crunchyroll with doing physical releases of their anime, like on Blu-ray and DVD. And of course, dubs are going to be produced not only, I think, for those releases. I think the dubs will also be streamed. I'm not quite sure about that at the moment, but yeah, but definitely also for the Blu-ray and the DVDs. And if I'm not mistaken, Funimation is going to help Crunchyroll with the production of that because, of course, they have much more experience with that. They have been doing that for years now. And Crunchyroll recently announced that they would like to dabble into that market too, not only streaming. And apparently Funimation is going to give them a helping hand with that, which I think is a very good thing for them. Mm-hmm. Because they got a lot of the groundwork already laid out then. And I don't know, what do you think about that news? I mean, it sounds overall positive, right?
I think it's great because it sounds like, they'll be able to expand each other's catalogs to people that, maybe you don't watch a lot on Funimation, like you're mainly Crunchyroll, but there's that one show. But hey, now it's watchable on Crunchyroll as well, so it works out for you. And likewise, maybe it'll start working out the same way for Funimation people. I mean, ideally, and this probably won't happen because of a lot of licensing issues because of the shows themselves. But I think it'd be really cool if they could create like a combined membership thing where you get access to both libraries without having to pay both fees.
Yeah, I don't know if that's going to happen because they're still two separate companies. They're not merging or anything. It's just a partnership. So I just think from what I gathered with the information that is out there and, some FAQs out there and everything, this deal was probably made because of the increasing licensing fees for the shows due to there being a lot of streaming services out there now. I mean, Crunchyroll and Funimation are the two big ones, and there's Amazon sometimes mixing themselves in there. Not
Amazon,
a lot.
Amazon, Hulu, Daisuke.
Yeah, exactly. So there are a lot of the two big ones, and then a lot of smaller ones that sometimes a bit for shows as well, and Netflix too. And, the bidding wars apparently have increased the licensing fees to such ridiculous heights over the past years that is not feasible for most of the licensees. I always mix those two terms up. I never know what's what. So for the people licensing the shows or buying the licenses for those shows, it got way too expensive from what I read up online on that topic, sometimes up to $200,000 per episode,
Wow.
which makes like $2.6 million for a 13 episode show. So yeah, that's kind of
That
ridiculous.
wow, that is.
Yeah, so you can imagine why they would do something like that, because if they're not competing with each other anymore over the licenses, because, it's a shared catalog now, at least in some parts, the companies, the anime production companies dishing out those licenses can't, play the licensing companies against each other anymore, because, hey, it doesn't really matter who of us is buying it, we're both getting it, basically. So, yeah, I guess that was the smart move in that regard, or I guess the only viable move at this point. We'll see how that actually. I mean, it definitely benefits the user because, like you said, we as consumers don't necessarily have to, subscribe to multiple services now, because it's gonna be the titles are gonna be spread more evenly, at least when it comes to those licensed by Funimation and Crunchyroll. There are a few outliers that will be licensed by Netflix and Daisuke and so on, of course, that maybe won't, or Amazon, like we had with Cabaneri, that won't be streamed on either Funimation or Crunchyroll. But the main bulk will be on both those services now, probably, and that's cool. But we'll see, what the companies that give out the licenses or sell the licenses will now do, that the main two buying companies have formed this partnership. Will they go to will they try to make it more interesting for the other outlier companies, like, I don't know, Netflix or Amazon? Be like, here, come buy these shows, maybe for a bit of a higher price, but you get like first come first serve status or something. So I don't know. It will be interesting to see how that changes the landscape for anime licensing in the West.
Hopefully for the better.
Yeah, so far right now, this looks really positive. We won't be able to tell how it turns out in the long run, but yeah, it will be interesting to witness. I'm pretty sure, and yeah, we're definitely gonna get more out of our service subscriptions now, which is definitely a good thing. So if you haven't subscribed yet to either Funimation or Crunchyroll, now is a good time to start, because you're gonna get even more bang for your buck than you got before. So yeah.
Hashtag not an ad. Hashtag could be an ad.
Subtle. Anyway, yeah, that was a big news for this week. What else? What else do we have on the roster, so to speak?
Well, pretty much the bulk of what I got for us is announcements of upcoming shows, movies, etc., and whatnot. So let's start with the arguably not so good and kind of move along the spectrum to the better. Toho dropped a trailer the other day for Cyborg 009 Call of Justice, and I was like, yeah, Cyborg 009 is great. I love the old series, and then I saw the trailer. It's some of the ugliest CG I've ever seen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it doesn't look good. I mean, one of the Cyborg 009 movies that came out before that, you looked it up. What was the name again?
009 Re-Cyborg.
Re-Cyborg, right. That was already done in the typical, or now typical, low-frame CG with bland character models and everything. So I didn't expect much from this. Although I believe the Devilman crossover was in traditional animation. I might be mistaken there, but I think, yeah, that was classic. So could have turned out either way. But yeah, this is a shame. I still need to watch one of the older shows, the 2001 show. But yeah, this one I probably will ignore just because of the style. Like you said, it looks like crap.
Yeah, I don't know. I want to see it just because, I always really like Cyborg 009, but at the same time, I'm kind of like, do I want to put myself through that?
Yeah, and we'll see. I mean, probably checking out the first episode anyway, like we do. But yeah, we'll see where it goes from there. Probably not far. So, what else?
But speaking of low frame CG,
Yes.
Berserk's coming back in the spring.
Oh right, they announced the second season. I didn't see that.
I simultaneously am like, hey, that's cool. More Berserk. I'm not a big fan of Berserk, but people love it. Cool, it's coming back. And in the same breath, I'm like, I'm sorry.
Yeah. I wish this is weird. I wish I could be more happy about this. And I am happy, don't get me wrong. It's like years ago, imagining me hearing about a new Berserk show coming out and then, getting even more seasons getting announced, that would have been like, oh my god, this is the best day of my life or something. But now with the current series, it's like, yeah, okay, that's neat. All right. I mean, I'm gonna talk more about the first season when we actually do a review of it next, in our next season. And it has its good and bad parts, obviously, and yeah, I'm still looking forward to the second season, but with the caveat that it's gonna look just as crappy as this one. On the other hand, it's probably gonna have the same strong writing, and it's still Berserk, and Berserk is fucking amazing. And even if the series looks like crap, it's probably gonna be good and entertaining in every other aspect than the visuals, which the current series is too. But yeah, I'll elaborate on that in the eventual review. But yeah, right now I'm kinda happy that we're getting a second season. Obviously, more Berserk is always good. I
Mm.
just wish it would have been a different incarnation than the current one.
It's like I was saying, I said on Twitter about the Cyborg 009 movie. Not like this, man.
Yeah, yeah, it's kind of a shame.
But also, speaking of not like this, so I've been out of the Pokemon anime game since before Ash went to Johto. But
Really?
there's been images in video of the upcoming Sun and Moon series, and oh my god.
Does it look good?
No!
Okay.
Ash, so, okay, let's drill this down.
I like that you called him ass.
Well, he certainly looks like it. Ash essentially got his ass kicked so hard in the Kalos League that they sent him back to school.
This is
And
fantastic.
and I'm not gonna dump on Yokai Watch too hard because I know people love it, but that's really what it looks the direction it looks like they took with the character designs because it looks really bad.
Like really simplified or something?
Yeah, I just linked CC to some key art, and let's hear his reaction in real time.
Oh, Jesus. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, he got yanked up. Lanky arms.
yes, that is the.
Noodle man.
Let's just say that is the face of a broken trainer after getting curb stomped in the Kalos League. Because I think we've come to the realization that if they ever let Ash become the champion in any league, he'd have to hang up his hat, and they'd have to, God forbid, come up with a new character.
That smile on his face says pure despair.
It really
It looks
does.
so forced. It looks like he took refuge in heavy drugs or something.
Yeah. Yeah, it's unfortunate because again, I've been out of the anime game on as far as Pokemon is concerned. I've played the games on and off, but to see it look like this is like,
I'm really surprised that you didn't watch past what was it then, Orange Islands or something.
I think I might have watched bits and pieces of that, but I mean, let's be real. The show's coming up on 800 episodes.
I think I watched until Advanced Battle or the second season of that. I don't know if that was Advanced Champions or something. After they introduced May or whatever her name was, the girl with the red bandana.
Yeah.
Because that was specifically those two seasons were animated by OLM, if I'm not mistaken, who've also done work on Shinkongatai Godana. And
Oh.
weirdly enough, I don't know if it's the same director or anything, or it's just because it's the same company, but some of the battles in those two seasons look downright amazing.
Hmm.
Like super, I don't know, I wouldn't call it super Sakuga, but like for Pokemon, which is a pretty, just in terms of animation, pretty bare bones show that it's not like, that never was super, I don't know, super action packed and had like super fight choreography on or anything up to that point. Suddenly, Pokemon's doing like these really crazy kung fu moves and everything, and the camera work gets over the top. And we're like, what is this show? This is amazing.
Like, I mean, a friend of ours was linking clips to me of the final few episodes of X and Y, and there
Mm,
are some moments where it does look really good,
yeah.
and then they turn around and and just turn it into the bastard offspring of Yokai Watch, and it's like,
Well, maybe the simplified character designs will lend themselves better to more fluid animation. I don't know. Sometimes that happens. So maybe we'll see an upgrade there, like, the show being on a good, constant level in terms of animation. But I don't know. I'm not. I mean, I'm not gonna watch it. Like you have
yeah,
been
me
out.
neither.
I watched the show longer than you. Apparently, I don't know why. I never was a fan of the games, but I guess because that was one of the few anime on TV back then, and that's why I watched it. But yeah, I'm not. I dropped out then, and I'm not. I'm not gonna drop back in. So
Yeah, because I mean, I understand wanting to watch Ash's adventures, but number one, he's the world's worst trainer.
I was about to say, do you understand? Because I don't. At this point, he should have been like the fucking king of the world. He's seen so much. He's collected so many Pokemon. He should have learned something. You should have kicked Gary Oak's ass many times over. He should be like the best trainer out there. And no, he's still the fucking biggest loser on the planet. Who I assume still. The first thing he does when he sees a new Pokemon is fucking pull out his Pokedex and, oh my god, what the fuck is that? Like, he doesn't know. He knows nothing.
Pikachu's level must have rolled over at least 10 times at this point. Like, if you look at it, he's got like a marker for prestiging that many times next to the number.
Yeah.
But, oh, God. The other thing is, you know, I I I caught a lot of flack for this from a couple other friends, but I fell out of playing the games for several years, but I've kind of at this point played all of them with, the magic of remakes.
Okay.
So I'd rather experience the adventure that way and say, hey, look at my team that I used to become the champion, Ash.
Well, I only played Pokemon Y just, to play a Pokemon game, which I've never done before. And it was alright, but it was just like, I don't know, maybe too bare bones for me in regards of story and everything. I like the mechanics, but still wasn't enough for me to say like, oh my god, I'm gonna buy every Pokemon game from now on. So, yeah, that might have been the thing that, would have made me watch the anime too, but nope. I guess I was always more of a Digimon guy. Not that I played the games for that either, but yeah, I always liked the anime more because those had actually, story and competent characters, at least in some regard, and not the worst main ever.
Yeah, I mean, I never really got into Digimon, so
Yeah.
sorry, everybody.
Well, anyway, yeah, we'll see. We'll see if this is like the downfall of Pokemon, or maybe that new star revitalized the franchise even more. Who knows? But
I mean,
I'm pretty sure it will stick around.
I'll say, let's be real, Pokemon will never die.
Yeah, probably not. As long as Nintendo is alive and is fucking churning out those games, there will be anime for it.
Yeah.
All right.
Uh, just a few more quick things. Speaking of game adaptations, there's this game series called Akiba's Trip.
Never heard of it.
It's sort of a weird off-kilter action game where the object is to strip off your opponent's clothes while you're fighting them.
Oh, did Tecmo Koei or more specifically Team Ninja work on that game?
No, they didn't. It's I believe the developer is called Acquire.
Okay. Never heard of
But
them either. Maybe a reason for that.
I think they are, well, obviously compared to other studios, they're a bit smaller, but Akiba Strip is, somewhat of a cult following. Because of that, it's getting an adaptation starting in January. It's being animated by Studio Gonzo.
Oh.
So we'll see how that goes.
Ooh. Yeah, I can't even remember when the last time was that Studio Gonzo released something worth watching. So we'll see.
I haven't seen their name pop up in, I don't remember how long.
I think the last thing I watched from them and enjoyed were, Gankutsu and Romeo Cross Juliet.
Oh, I couldn't get in. I could not get into either of those.
I love Gankutsu. Romeo Cross Juliet was mixed bag, but still, I always enjoy like adapting classic literature into anime with a weird twist. Do something interesting with it, like keep the story intact, the basic story, but change everything around it. That is always neat, and those two shows did that, and yeah, it was pretty cool. But yeah, I think since then they have done nothing, and even before then their track record was pretty spotty. Yeah, we'll see how that turns out. The premise and the setup of that thing doesn't sound too promising either.
I've been playing through the second game the past week or so because we actually didn't get the first game. We only got the second one for whatever reason. It's a game.
Okay.
You can play it.
All right. I guess you can say that it's an anime. You can watch it when it comes out.
The next game that they're releasing, Akiba's Beat, actually looks a bit more interesting and more like it looks like they're trying to make it in an RPG in line with like one of the Tales games, but I haven't had any hands-on time with it, so I could be way off the mark.
All right. Okay.
We're almost to the end, I swear, because the next two things are things that you're more interested in.
Am I? I'm at the edge of my seat already.
I'm certain of that because there was talk about Yowamushi Pedal's third season, its title, and there was a key visual revealed.
Oh, nice.
Yowamushi Pedal New Generation is set to premiere in January.
I'm actually surprised because I thought the manga was finished, but I guess not. Or maybe this is anime only? I don't know. I'm happy to hear that because I love Yowamushi Pedal. It's one of the best sports anime I've seen in recent years. And yeah, it's funny. Anime can make every sport interesting, even bicycle racing, which I think is just, in real life, one of the most boring things to watch ever. But goddamn, did that show everything it could with that premise and fill it with ludicrous characters and, over-the-top emotions and everything. Fantastic music. Yeah, Yowamushi Pedal is a fantastic sports anime. I loved it quite a lot. It's over the top. It's funny. It's entertaining. It's heartwarming in a lot of places. Great show, and I'm glad to hear that it's getting a new season. I also watched the movie. That was great too. So yeah, overall great package. I hope the third season will be just as good as the previous ones. When is it gonna?
In January.
Oh, nice. Oh, apparently it's gonna be a good winter then. We'll see.
Yep. And last thing is the upcoming new series of the Seven Deadly Sins.
Yes, I already saw news for that. So we got a 4-episode special series. There was
Signs of the Holy War.
Signs of the Holy War. I haven't watched that yet. I'm gonna do that once the last episode airs, which should be actually on the day this episode will be this podcast episode will be released. So Sunday. I'm gonna watch all of 4 of them in a row. This was just, I guess, a short intermediate. Intermission between the 2 seasons. Arslan got only like 10 episodes this season, and then the rest was the 7 Deadly Sins special. But yeah, I loved the first series of that. It was just very very old school shonen-y, feel very much like old school Dragon Ball in parts. Had an interesting setting, which is not used that often. Was a spin on knights and everything, just in a shonen dress up basically. But classic old school shonen with with kind of a perv as a main character, but still fun. Sometimes really cool animation. Definitely one of A1's better shows in my opinion. Even though it got a bit spotty in certain parts, but most of the fights look cool. And it got a soundtrack by Hiroyuki Sawano, so
Hey.
set in that department as well. So I hope he will return for the new season as well. So yeah, if you want to watch a pretty neat shonen anime or in the mood for it, check out Seven Deadly Sins. It's pretty damn entertaining, and I'm looking to see where the story goes after the first season ended, because it ended on kind of a cliffhanger, and it seems like that 4-episode special is a setup just for the big confrontation that is going to happen in the second season. Title sure sounds like it. I mean, Signs of Holy War sounds like something big is brewing. But yeah, looking forward to more Seven Deadly Sins, definitely.
Cool.
All right. I guess that's it for the news, and now we gonna dig into some trash.
Let me get my shovel. It's not every day, or not every season, I guess, that I would throw a show that looks, decently good just into the pile. But this past season, Kiznaiver was one of those shows.
Yeah, and it didn't necessarily look like it when we watched the first episode, because that was kind of promising.
Yeah, so basically the story of Kiznaiver, it's easy to kind of summarize, but at the same time it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So there's this it revolves around this kid Katsuhira, who's very just blasé about everything. He comes across like he just really doesn't care about himself or the world around him. And he and 6 others get pulled into this Kiznaiver experiment, as it's called, doing the title drop, nice and hard early on, where each of them has a wound, and whenever one of them feels pain, whether it's physical or emotional, so do the rest of them. And I don't know if the show was trying to do some sort of social commentary that I wasn't understanding, but it felt really way out there, and I really got to a point where I was like, no, it's way too weird for me.
I like weirdness just when it's interesting enough, and I mean the basic setup sounded interesting in the first few episodes, but even then there were already some problems with the show that arose. I mean, it wasn't necessarily that the premise is too out there. The problem is that it didn't do anything too interesting with it after a while. It didn't get to a point where it's like, oh, okay, this is what you're doing. This sure is pretty interesting. For a show that is all about emotions, it didn't manage to conjure any in me besides feelings of mild annoyance, I guess, because I couldn't relate to any of the characters. I might be pretty alone out there, because I think there are a lot of people who love Nico, which is this bubbly, happy girl that wants to believe in fairies or anything, or it turns out she doesn't. I won't even go into that, because every character has a weird quirk in that show, a weird psychological quirk, and she has a bunch of them. Anyway, but yeah.
It kind of strikes me because there is a moment in one episode where it's you have to share your deepest, darkest secret with everyone else. And it struck me like they were trying to do there's this plot point in the first Danganronpa where Monokuma hands out to everyone, oh, here's your deepest secret. If you don't want anyone to find out what it is, you're gonna have to kill someone. And it seems like they were trying to do something like that, but in the opposite way to bring everyone together. It was weird, man. I don't.
Yeah.
again, maybe it was too like trying to be artsy fartsy, five deep, seven me sort of thing, but I don't know.
No, even then, I mean, if there's like, and I assume there is in that show. Sometimes, metaphors or analogies, can fly over your head and anything, and I will get to that in the next show's review. But this, if it was just that for this show, that wouldn't have been like a problem for me. I would have like, if I would have gotten the feeling that, oh, there is enough substance to this, or allusions to substance in this show, or in the basic premise, that I could get something interesting out of that. I would have like read up on it or read reviews that analyze the show more thoroughly. But nothing about the show like made me want to do that. Like I said, couldn't relate to any of the characters. Nico and Hajime were annoying to me. Noriko was an aloof asshole. She's the girl who is behind apparently this whole experiment and is bringing our main characters together, and then she's like interacting with them too on a limited basis.
Yeah,
And
she seemed very aloof about everything and just like kind of like a bitch
yeah,
sometimes.
exactly. Like the first thing she does is throwing Katsuhira off the stairs and then lying about it. I mean, it
And
could.
Katsuhira's like, "Oh, I fell down the stairs." No, you didn't.
Yeah, yeah. That was weird. I mean, it could have been played for comedy, but it really wasn't. So I didn't know what to make of that. Honoka is a bitch. Yoshiharu is a creep who is like constantly orgasming because he's a masochist or whatever. He gets off on pain.
Yeah.
And every time someone gets hurt, and that's like if someone gets hurt who has the scar and is in the Kizuna system, the others get hurt too. In regards to that, Katsuhiro always is happy when someone else gets hurt, or at least it feels like that because he's experiencing the same pain, and he gets off on that. Not Katsuhiro,
Yoshiharu.
Yoshiharu, right? So that was just super weird, and I didn't know. I didn't feel comfortable watching that character. And Tsukuhita is a poser, and Katsuhira is a big nothing of a character, at least to some point, because he doesn't have any emotion. And I guess one of the main draws of the shows might be to find out why that is that way and what his relationship with Noriko might be, because apparently they have met each other as children, or, the show alludes to that, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, they did they touched on that in some weird way.
Yeah, but it's like I'm watching this show and I'm like, oh, okay, there are some things in here that might be interesting, but every minute I'm spending with these characters, I'm more and more annoyed. I don't want to be with them. I don't want to know more about them. I don't want to see them come together. And that's one of the other things that show was pretty obviously doing. It's like, okay, we have these kind of unsympathetic characters who need to, and we're going to make them share their innermost feelings and basically tend to their wounds, to each other's wounds by, coming closer together, talking to each other, becoming friends and everything, or being forced to become friends, and sharing and opening up and everything. So there's some obvious, social commentary context to get to that, I guess, and some messaging in there. But still, that's not enough substance to make me like get over these characters and make me want to actually see them become better people, because the show doesn't move fast enough along with that plan.
Yeah, it just kind of takes its sweet time and does
Yeah.
nothing with it.
It's like, here are those characters, and now we're gonna go do this today, and we're not gonna really elaborate on what the Kizuna system is actually used for, and what is the end game here, and why are we doing this? And okay, we might be moving closer together this week, but maybe not. And Noriko isn't saying anything of substance, and this is happening in every episode. And like, and now we're gonna introduce this weird masochism creep, and yeah, it just didn't want me to stick around.
Yeah, like they tried to play off Noriko as being like this very mysterious figure, and it's like, okay, should we care about this?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. She didn't. She didn't make me want to. It's like, oh, it's her again. Please kick her out. She's she's just annoying.
It's like there's something going on here. How about you show us that? Oh, no, we're gonna go in another direction. Okay.
Yeah.
Because I had some hope for this series because it was written by Mario Okada, who did great with A Lull in the Sea and Gundam Iron-Blooded Orphans, but it seemed like with this one they maybe pull back on the reins a bit.
Yeah, Mario Okada is a mixed bag. We've said this before. She has done Iron-Blooded Orphans, but she's also done stuff, that is spotty in terms of writing, or at least it seems like that. Or I have heard a lot of negative things about some of her shows, and one of them has just aired the season before this one, The Lost Village, which also apparently was pretty shit. So yeah, her writing is a mixed bag again, and yeah, it looks like Kiznaiver is not one of the better shows. Don't get me wrong, I've heard people talk about Kiznaiver in a very positive light too.
Yeah, I hear like it got better towards the end,
Yeah,
but I couldn't be bothered to stick with it that long.
exactly. The show didn't, for me at least, and apparently for you as well, didn't get to a part in its story quick enough where I could, ignore all the annoying parts about the characters that I would be enticed to keep watching just for to finding out where the story actually goes. Because for me, it wasn't going anywhere in the first 3 episodes. I'm like, what is happening? What are they doing? I was constantly asking myself that, and at some point, I just had to make a cut and say, no, this is not going anywhere fast enough, and I don't like the characters, so fuck it.
Yeah, I mean the show is directed by Hiroshi Kobayashi, and aside from like this other OVA, this is like the biggest thing he's directed. So
Yeah, Kimi no Irumachi or something. I've not heard of
yeah,
that before. But yeah, I mean it was produced by Studio Trigger, so it looks pretty cool.
oh yeah, it's definitely got good style and great animation, but you, you can't carry a show on that alone.
Sometimes you can, if it's a dumb action show, for example. If it's a dumb action show that has great animation and great art design, that can be enough to keep you around. But this show tried to be more. I'm pretty sure it did, and maybe for some people it achieved that goal. But for me, it was either too obtuse or too, I don't know, too simple. Maybe I already got the message or where it was going in the first 3 episodes. I was like, okay, is there not more to this? Is that all we're getting? And are they going to drag this out with every episode and like take a really long time for the characters to get to that realization the viewer already had like a few episodes ago?
Yeah,
And we're gonna instead wallow in the shitty dialogue writing of Mario Okada right now. And I don't know. Yeah, it. Mm.
if I had to say, or if there was one thing other than the anime, had to say I like, it's the music.
Yeah,
Because it was done by Yuki Hayashi, who's done other great shows like Classroom Crisis, Death Parade, Gundam Build Fighters, Haikyuu, My Hero Academia. So, as the kids nowadays would say, the music in the show was lit.
is that really what the kids say these days, John?
I don't know. I don't know why they say it, but they say it.
All right. Okay.
I'm starting to make myself sound like an old man.
Yeah. Well, this is an old man podcast, so that's all right. Certified old man podcast. It's on the logo, people. Anyway.
Yeah.
Yay. Anyway. Yeah. It's a shame. Like there are a lot of good things about this show. It's just the main meat didn't do anything for me. It's not, at least not enough to keep me around. It really tried to make me not want to watch it, despite its great production values. So yeah, that's a shame.
It really was a shame because I figured hey, I like to see what Trigger's up to, and then what we got out of that deal was kind of.
Well, at least we got Luluco too.
That's true.
Yeah,
that is true. Luluco was fantastic.
Trigger redeemed.
I'll say, but that was also Imaishi just
Yes.
flying off the handle and saying, "This is what you really want."
You're implying that Imaishi sometimes does show where he doesn't fly off the handle.
Yeah.
He can't not fly off the handle. So I don't know if the premise for you sounds interesting enough to check out Kiznaiver. Please, for all intents and purposes, do so. Maybe you will find something that makes you stick around. Some people apparently did. I don't know what it was. I can't tell because besides the production values that were not enough to keep me around in the show because there were too many other factors deterring me from watching it. I don't know, but yeah. Like, be my guest. If what we told you about it, if you still think something about that sounds interesting, please try it out. Maybe you will last longer than we did.
I mean, I only got slightly further than you before I was like, "Yep, see ya."
The big review of this episode is gonna be Concrete Revolutio. This has this English subtitle, Superhuman Phantasmagoria. And the second season also has the subtitle, The Last Song. I don't know. A lot of text in that one. Anyway, yeah, Concrete Revolutio is set in an alternate universe version of Tokyo that houses all the superpowered creatures you have probably seen in every comic, manga, anime, or movie ever. The main character, Jiro Hitoyoshi, works for the Superhuman Bureau, which is an institution that at the same time assembles a bunch of superpowered individuals to protect Earth from evil, like hostile aliens and stuff like that, but also provides protection from other superhumans who might have gone rogue, become criminals, superhuman criminals and stuff like that. So among Jiro's partners are the magical witch girl Kiko Hoshino, the ghost Furuta, who has the appearance of a child and can transform into like these wild cartoon animals. It looks pretty ridiculous sometimes. The time-traveling Jaguar Man. I was about to say Cheetah Man, but I think he's supposed to be a Jaguar. I think that's his name even.
I think the term Cheetah Man is copyrighted by someone else.
Yeah, but company who made a shitty game. Anyway, that you couldn't finish, I think. Or was that the second part? I don't know.
Either way, why would you bother?
Yeah, exactly. The time-traveling Jaguar Man, Hyoma Yoshimura, and the yokai woman Emi Kino, who has apparently a deeper connection with Jiro, which we'll find out later in the show, actually much later. During the course of the series, they have to fight aliens, kaiju, bug people, androids, espers, demons, and other superhumans. And Jiro is forced to reevaluate his view on several different aspects of the world he's living in, especially if his precious definition of justice is as clear-cut as he thought it is. So yeah, this is a pretty wild show. It's produced by Studio Bones, which should, say that the animation overall is pretty great. But for this show, it's kind of a mixed bag. Again, it's a bit, I don't know, there's some pretty big high points, but there are also some very, I wouldn't say low points, but there's a lot of mediocrity in there in terms of animation, in my opinion. Sometimes you get these downright amazingly fluidly animated fight scenes that could be right out of One Punch Man or Mob Psycho 100. And most of the time when people are just walking and talking and stuff like that, and, you get some battles that are not as important to the story, the animation is pretty cookie cutter, which is kind of a shame, but I guess as long as they highlight the really important parts, that's cool. It also helps because the show is really confusing, but I'll get to that. The art design is very interesting too because it's super cartoony. You got these very bright colors. A lot of environments are often depicted in simple shapes and one-color scenery and stuff like that. You sometimes only get silhouettes for side characters and peoples like onlookers for a fight or something. You often have small dots in the backgrounds, like if you zoomed in on an old school comic book page. Think Roy Lichtenstein, he has done a lot of that in his art, or mainly that. If you've seen one of his pictures, you can imagine something like that happening in Concrete Revolutio very often. Furuota, like I mentioned, the ghosts often transform into very cartoony animals that could be from something like Tiny Toons or an old Disney show. So yeah, it's got a pretty unique visual style to it, which immediately drew me to the show because it's something you don't see in anime every day. Like, it feels like almost sometimes it's more of a Western cartoon show than an anime in terms of some of its character designs. And it was pretty cool. I like that. Diversity is always nice. And yeah, it's written by Sho Aikawa and directed by Seiji Mizushima, the team that brought you Full Metal Alchemist 2003, a very beloved show. And yeah, they teamed up for this again. And if you see, if you compare some of the story parts of Full Metal Alchemist, some of the political messaging, and the stuff that happens in Concrete Revolution, you can see the handiwork of that team in both shows. And like, oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense. This seems like something Sho Aikawa would write. And yeah, this works. this looks familiar. Seiji Mizushima has also directed Gundam 00 and Shaman King and stuff like that. So, and the show also later is bringing in some guest writers, like again Urobuchi, for example, everybody's darling, who is writing, of course, the Vietnam War episode of this show.
Oh God!
Very dark and dire and very, very sad episode in terms of story and character and everything. So who would have thought that would be again Urobuchi every episode, except for everyone who knows his writing. Well, yeah, but it was a good episode. So naturally, he wrote good stuff. So yeah. Let's get into the actual meat of this show. Right off the bat, I have to say, this show has a very high barrier of entry, in my opinion. The main reason for that is that it constantly jumps between two timelines. One set at what it calls Shinka Era 42, one in Shinka Era 47. Shinka Era is the alternate universe name of Showa Era. In our world, which is the time that Emperor Hirohito reigned over Japan, and that lasted from 1926 to 1989. So the two main timelines in the show correspond roughly with the years 1967 and 1972, from our history. So we have these two timelines, and the show is constantly jumping between them without giving the viewer much indication what happened in between those years. Why certain characters look different, act different towards each other, etc. We immediately learned that Jiro, the main character, apparently had some kind of falling out with the Bureau somewhere between those two time frames, but not exactly what happened. And the show continues that trend pretty much throughout its first season. Things get much more cohesive with the start of the second season, but in the beginning there's a lot of figuring out and remembering what time, which scene of which episode is set in, where the characters are, what their current relationship is to each other, what faction they belong to, which they're allied with and everything. Some of that stuff happens in the second season too, especially towards the end, where you have really trouble figuring out, wait, why are those characters working together now? Why are those characters working against each other? What happened? And then it takes you a bit, and then, all right, that's why. And yeah, the show does that a lot. Where you really have to pay attention to know what's going on.
Yeah, the whole jumping back and forth the way it did, or I guess I should say the hard cuts back and forth, are really what got me out of it pretty quickly, because I was like, I don't get what the hell's going on.
Yeah, I can totally see that. For me, it was really confusing in the beginning too, because I wasn't aware of the relation to our history, basically, that the Shinka era was the same as the Showa era in our world, basically, and what actual years that corresponded to. That this was basically set between the late 60s and early 70s. That I would have made much more sense of that.
I don't know if that was so much a problem for me, so much as was trying to connect the dots between the two timelines, as it were.
Yeah, and that is very much so the biggest problem in the beginning, like figuring out how these two timelines are even connected, what happens. And the show is like keeping all that information pretty close to its chest. Like, it's not letting go of it easily. And when it does, you don't always know when it does. It's like, was this an important part? Was this relating to what's going to happen later or not? And yeah, that's problematic. You sometimes not only get those two timelines in one episode, you sometimes also get character flashbacks, to earlier points in the characters' lives, tell you some of their origin story and everything, which even adds even more to the confusion. Like, okay, where the fuck in time are we right now? What is happening? I'm losing track here. It's a whole lot to grasp on a first viewing. You will probably miss out on a lot of details just because you don't know which of them are important and should be remembered and which can be ignored. Like finding out the red line, the red guiding line in that mush of story and characters is not an easy task. And some of it I only figured out reading the reviews to the corresponding episodes, because they showed me like a perspective on certain episodes that I didn't consider, and was like, oh right, this was the important part. Oh, this was this was where it was going and everything. So yeah, that definitely helped. But having to do that is kind of a downer, kind of a, I don't know, a bit obstructive when it comes to experiencing actual pleasure while viewing the show and not scratching your head all the time. On the other hand, if you stick around with it for it, this gives you the show some kind of higher rewatch value than other shows, maybe, because you kind of want to go back after you finished it and seek out the connective tissue you missed on your first run through it. It's like, okay, I want to know, did I miss how did I leave out why these characters act that way, or did I just miss a detail? And some of the stuff, yeah, I definitely missed it. I rewatched some parts of certain episodes, and it was, oh, okay, that's what they did. Right. Thank you. I totally missed that on my first watch. And it wasn't necessarily my fault that I watched that, because, I paid attention and everything, but I just didn't know where to look because so much was happening on the screen at the same time. And so many different timelines and everything. Yeah. So yeah. Besides this main mystery story of figuring out what exactly happened between Jiro and the Bureau, we pretty much get a new case of the Bureau versus some form of superhuman in each episode. A bunch of characters are introduced. Lots of them also reappearing in the later timeline. So again, more to keep track of.
Yeah. That seemed to be the running theme with this show.
Yeah, basically, the show is constantly throwing new stuff at you, and it's your task to figure out what is important, who are these characters, what are they doing in the later timeline, and how does that relate and everything. And it's gonna take you a while it takes the show a while to let everything flow together. Basically, in the in the second third of the second season, everything starts to form a big picture, and that's quite a while for a 24 episode show to to do that. But yeah, I think, in my opinion, all comes together in the end pretty well, and there's a lot of big reveals in the show that help make sense of it. A lot that happened earlier and probably left you confused then, but still, I can understand why people would have trouble staying around for that long if they couldn't make sense of it to that up to that point, like after the first few episodes or something. One of the most interesting things about the show, in my opinion, there are a lot of alternate universe analogies and metaphors for events and characters, real and fictional, from our world in this show. Some are pretty straightforward. We get stuff like this universe's version of the Beatles concert at the Nippon Budokan, which was pretty famous, the Winter Olympics, the Cold War, student protests, the Vietnam War. The last two were already heavily featured in another show we reviewed, if you remember, Young Blackjack. We got that in the show. We have a version of Astro Boy in this show called Earth-chan. we have versions of Ultraman, Godzilla, a Mazinger look-alike, etc. And the whole concept of how would superhumans have affected, history and changed history, is basically a big giant reference to Alan Moore's Watchmen comic book. So yeah, you got a lot of references, you got a lot of analogies and metaphors for other stuff in there, and it's fun to figure those out. But those were the straightforward ones. There's also a lot more obtuse stuff, like, for example, the kaiju, or what the kaiju symbolize, or certain characters symbolize, or the idea of superhumans in general. Like, are they a metaphor for weapons, or for people just who just think for themselves, actually, instead of following orders and everything, and like adhering to everything their government dictates them to do. There's a lot of meat to dig your teeth into in this show. If you are the kind of person who likes their anime to be a bit of a puzzle, and I wouldn't say I am necessarily that kind of person. It's just that Concrete Revolutio wasn't so obtuse that it scared me away. There was always, in contrast to Kiznaiver, which we discussed just a few minutes ago, there was always something interesting happening in that show that kept me around, be it like an interesting battle scene or a new character introduced that I was really relating to and that I wanted to see where it was going, or being an interesting event from history depicted like in a different light, and like, oh, what is the show doing with that? That's interesting. I want to see where this goes, and what does the show say about this specific historic event? A lot of interesting stuff in that show. It's just hidden under a lot of different looking puzzle pieces, and putting them all together can be kind of a lot of work, maybe, for some people. And I can totally understand why, you wouldn't want to, delve into that if the first episodes are already too confusing in that regard, and, hard to make sense of it. Yeah, like I said, there are also some great action scenes, but the main meat of the show, in my opinion, figuring out what all the stuff is supposed to be to relate to in our world, and what show Aikawa wants to say about certain political and / historical events. In that regard, it was really interesting to compare the depiction of certain events in the show with the depiction in Young Blackjack. You watched the whole series and watched the Vietnam part 2. I didn't get to the Vietnam stuff in Young Blackjack. But remember how one-sidedly negative the student protests were depicted?
Yeah.
So all that stuff is much more balanced in Concrete Revolutio. If the blame is shifted more often to one party than another, it's usually the respective governments, government and armies of the United States and Japan. But even then, there are some little caveats here and there, showing certain motivations that you can, like, okay, I can understand where those people are coming from. It kind of makes sense, stuff like that. Like, in general, one of the main themes of the show is that there rarely is a clear good and evil in the world. A lot of characters in the beginning of the show, and some even throughout the whole show, have a very black and white approach to the idea of justice, and the writing is really hammering home that the lines between good and evil and the definition of justice are a lot more gray than anything else. It's interesting to see how many different ways the show drives home that idea, and I wish it would have given some of the cast a deeper characterization to bring those points across, instead of using them as simple mouthpieces or plot devices, because that's what they're mostly used for. It's mostly like, okay, this character is going to talk about this topic, and this character is going to talk about this topic, and so that we the writers can tell you what we think about this specific thing in history or this specific topic and theme. It doesn't naturally evolve from, or necessarily naturally evolve from the characterization of the specific cast members, because a lot of them are really underwritten. If the show is lacking in anything besides better conveyance, because of the different timelines and anything, it's really interesting character writing, especially since we have such a giant cast. At least some of them really needed that extra bit of emotional depth or background info or relatability, which the show is really stingy with. Like, if even more so than with the story and plot points, really keeping like the inner character workings to itself, and lets you like just guess. Well, what did that character do in the past? Why is he the character that he is or she? I don't know. It's just is that way, and yeah, that's kind of a shame. As a result, a lot of the important scenes lack a bit of emotional oomph. It's like there are a lot of scenes that could be really cool, but just because you don't have that strong relation to the characters, the battles are not that emotional impactful, and that's really kind of a shame. There's so much switching between certain characters and different timeline versions of them that it's hard to tell who those specific characters really are right at this moment, and why they do what they do. Jiro is pretty okay in terms of writing, since we learn at least something about him, especially in season 2, because then he becomes really important, and you learn what his role is in the play and why he is the main character and everything. And the other cast member I would mention is the cyborg detective Raito. He has also a pretty subtly written arc in the show, especially when compared to other characters. The 2 episodes that focus on him are also some of the strongest episodes in the show, in my opinion. I would recommend the show if you are not easily deterred by a confusing story layout. John, you already said like the first 2 episodes left you cold because you had no idea where the show was going and pretty much nothing made sense to you, right?
Yeah, I mean, like, I like a good plot twist, but I like being able to follow it to its logical conclusion rather than being like, hey, let's go from point A all the way up to like point L and then back to B and then forward to Z and then back to C,
Yeah.
which it seemed like that was what it was doing from the couple of episodes I watched.
Okay, so your main problem was just, the jumping between the timelines.
Yeah,
Okay. Yeah, like I said, I can understand that. The show is willfully obtuse in that regard at the beginning, and really trying to, have its mystery box and be like, okay, what is this all about? Oh, you'll find out, I guess, some way through season 2 or something. Have fun figuring it out on yourself until then. I would say if you experience the same problem as John did in the beginning of the show, like if this is like really, really keeping you from enjoying the show, try to focus on the individual character and event stories. Don't try to make too much sense of the later timeline or how the show leads up to it. Like maybe ignore that for now. Just concentrate on the story in the current timeline, not the future timeline. You can still figure out which is which by closely watching the big letters that tell you which year it is. Try to look out for that. That helps a bit. And then just concentrate on the thing that happens in the now, and maybe leave out the thing in the future. Those things get elaborated later on. Maybe that will help, so you can focus on the character stories themselves. For the new characters introduced, and that will maybe help you later better relate to those characters that reappear in the future arc. I don't know. Can't really tell what specifically kept me around. Maybe it was just this barrage of interesting stuff and designs and new characters that were really interesting, that helped me over like this barrier of understanding what the show actually was about. And like I said, all the different events depicted from our world in this universe, just that might have been it. But yeah, like I said, try to focus on the individual stories and maybe keep the time in mind that the show is set in, because it's very relevant to the central themes of the series, and it's fun to figure out what each story bit or character could relate to in our history. Don't expect like super deep, great character writing or development, except for like maybe 2 or 3 characters out of the cast, or a constant barrage of great animation. The show doesn't have that either. It had like I said, it has some very neat standout fight scenes, but those are usually pretty short. And yeah, this is more about figuring out all the interesting things the show has to say about history and humanity as a theme in general, and what our understanding of good and bad is and everything. And yeah.
I mean, I will say, if nothing else, this show had style in very large supply.
Oh yeah.
And, I applaud it for that because it looked very appealing and just crazy and cool. I just, it's like with Kiznaiver though, that couldn't keep me around.
Yeah, weirdly enough, like those shows have, in that regard, maybe for you, the same problem but for different reasons. Like Kiznaiver is not throwing enough at you. That's interesting. Concrete Revolutio is throwing too much at you in a
I
very confusing way.
I honestly kind of feel like, and this is kind of relates to a show that I'm currently, a pair of shows that I'm currently watching that we're not going to talk about just yet, but where it is two different timelines, but the timelines are segregated clearly between the two shows to tell, two very, important parts of the story, but you can't, but the way it's set up is you're not supposed to watch one series and then the other. It's you're supposed to watch like one episode from this and then the same numbered episode from the other and bounce back and forth like that, because the way they play off each other is that, oh, this ties back into this part of the story. So,
Yeah.
And I'm being intentionally coy with what series it is, because
Oh, I know which series you're talking about.
you do, and I'm sure maybe some of the people out there listening will be able to figure it out too. But I want to save my extended thoughts for what is probably one of my shows of the season.
Looking forward to that review.
For when the time comes.
Yeah, yeah, and that seems to be like a good approach if the show is cohesive enough to connect these these two timelines on a weekly basis. And Concrete Revolution trying to cram it all into one episode per week, and the other show you're talking about is splitting it up in two shows, so it has a lot more time to talk about the characters and in each specific timeline and make everything connect better. And I guess Concrete Revolution could have done a much better job. I don't know why they chose to make it so difficult in the beginning. And like I said, it gets much better in the second season. Episodes are a lot more cohesive. It's a lot more like straightforward. A lot of the stuff from the first season comes back and now makes sense because it gets integrated into the developing story much better. So yeah, if you worry that the trend is going to continue, a long time into the second season, that's not going to happen. You can immediately tell from the beginning of the second season that things are getting more cohesive and make more sense, even though the show is still keeping some secrets from you. But yeah, and some information to itself, for some big reveals in the end. But like I said, it makes much more sense in the second season. If you have trouble keeping around in the first one, maybe try to read up a bit on each episode if you have problems figuring out what it was about and what the important parts are. If you don't want to do that, like I said, maybe focus on the character stories. Just wallow in all the cool stuff you're getting bombarded with, all the different anime references, all the different pop culture references, because there are a lot of that in the show, and they look pretty interesting. And just the style of the show. So yeah, there's a lot of cool shit to see in this show, which you would associate with anime, just like condensed in one crazy, over the top, sometimes maybe nonsensical and hard to make sense of show. In my opinion, it's worth checking out if you want to see all the cool shit anime has to offer in one show, and if you like to puzzle a bit when it comes to the message of the show you're watching and what the themes are and everything. Like I said, Concrete Revolution did a much better job for me to keep things interesting, even though it was confusing, than Kiznaiver did, and had a lot more characters that, even though underwritten, were relatable, interesting enough to make me, stick around to see where they were going. So make of that what you will. It's not an easy show to watch, but I think by the end it's worth it. I think it wraps up pretty nicely. It's got some pretty interesting things to say, and I think it's worth a watch, and maybe two. And that is a wrap on the 15th episode of Anime Brain Freeze. All the music in our show is from the Double Dragon Neon soundtrack by the amazing Jake Kaufman. Please go to vrit.badcamp.com and check out his awesome work. You can find us on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and animebrainfreeze.com. Leave us a comment any way you like, or send us an email to animebrainfreeze@gmail.com. Thanks for tuning in. We hope you had a good time, and please join us again on our next show. Adios.
Peace out, everyone.